Have a seat. Awesome. Okay, so sometimes when I'm getting ready for a message, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to this direction. I'm going to talk about this person. We're going to do this. We're going to dig into that. We're going to see what God says. Da-da-da-da-da. While I'm in the midst of it, God is like, hold on. The best laid plans. Then God goes, we need to expand this. So far, in our new series, Everything Changed, we're talking about some people that encountered Jesus and their life was never the same. We talked about Matthew and the Samaritan woman. Last week we talked about the centurion, soldier. If you missed any of those, you can go to our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. They're on there so that you can see what those are. But we're actually going to be looking at 3 individuals today. I thought we were just going to talk about 1, but God said, no, we're going to do 3. But before I do, I'm going to give you the one thing. Here it is. My faith should always be defined by action. My faith should always be defined by action. In fact, the Hebrew word for faith actually means in action. That's how it's defined. All right? So, we're going to look at 3 women today whose lives were forever changed by Jesus. And this interaction, what happened between them and Jesus, set the stage. I don't know if as I studied more of this, it set the stage for how we as a church should be viewing women and their roles here in the church. So, we're going to start in Luke chapter 8. Okay? Starting in verse 1. It says, soon afterward, Jesus began a tour of the nearby towns and villages, preaching and announcing the good news about the kingdom of God. He took his 12 disciples with him. Verse 2, along with some women he had healed and from whom he had cast out evil spirits. Among them were Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. Joanna, it pronounced Joanna in the original language. The wife of Cusas, who was Herod's business manager. And Susanna and many others who were contributing their own resources to support Jesus and his disciples. Because I think one of the things we don't comprehend a lot is that the amount of women that were involved in Jesus' ministry. Like, I don't think that we're really fully aware of all the women that were actually involved in his ministry and the significance, the significance of any woman being involved in any ministry during the time of Jesus. From what I've read, okay, I just want to give you a picture on what women faced in Jesus' day. And especially when it came to their relationship with God. All right, listen to this. The Greco-Roman and Jewish culture of Jesus' day was a society that embraced an honor-shame ideology that worked against women. It reinforced the silencing and subordination of women of all classes. The church is where women were invited to be active members and impactful leaders. When the church started, it was completely different than what was going on. Listen to this. Women were excluded from participation in the synagogue worship. restricted to a spectator role and forbidden to enter the temple beyond the court of women. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture of the temple. Okay? This area right here, this is called the woman's courtyard. It was about 3 football fields long. It was huge. Okay? And it wasn't only women that went through here, because a lot of people, they would enter through the beautiful gate, or the gate beautiful. That's where they would enter. And this is the place in the story of where Jesus was hanging out there when he was talking to his disciple about a woman who gave 2 mites. There were 11 treasury boxes that were in this area right here. And so people would enter through this gate, come in here. Everybody would come in through this gate. They would put their offerings in the treasure boxes. The men would go into the gate of Nicanor in there, and then the women would stay here. And sometimes they were allowed to actually go up here to watch what was happening down there. But they had to stay in this area. Okay, that was where they were. And woman was not even allowed to touch the scriptures because it was believed they would defile them. A man was not to talk much to a woman, even his wife. Talk with a woman in public was yet even more restrictive, okay? In Jewish culture, women were not allowed to learn the law at all. Both teaching and learning the scriptures were the privilege of men only. This is the culture that Jesus faced when he came on the scene. Yet he treated women very differently. Very differently. How he treated women should actually set the stage for how the church should treat women. All right, so I thought I was just going to talk about Mary, but we've got a couple other women we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Mary Magdalene. Okay, we're going to start with her. Okay, and this is what it says about Mary, is that she was demon-possessed. She wasn't a prostitute, so don't even go there. There's nothing in there that would even indicate she was a prostitute. She wasn't. She was demon-possessed. And back then, you know what? When you are oppressed by demons, it can cause illnesses. It can cause toxic behavior, destructive behavior. That's where Mary was. She was in that. Okay? And then she encountered Jesus, and it says she was freed from 7 demons that were inside of her. And from that point on in Mary's life, everything changed for her. Everything changed for her. She became totally full out committed to Jesus' ministry. From that point on, full out committed, no looking back. All the way through the good, the bad, even during the crucifixion, she was right there while Jesus was hanging on the cross. Mary Magdalene was there. Listen to what this says. Matthew chapter 27, verse 55. And many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him were watching from a distance. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee. Not only was she right there watching, listen to how John puts this. John chapter 19, verse 25. Standing near the cross. And you got to remember, when they were crucified, like in the movies, they're like way, way up high. No, they weren't. The cross was put on the ground. They were this high so that you could walk up to them and spit on people in the face. So Mary was there by the cross with Jesus' mother, his mother and sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. Okay? And not only that, Mary Magdalene watched as they took Jesus' body down, followed them, and watched as they put Jesus' body into the tomb. Mary was there. Listen to what this says, Matthew chapter 27, verse 61. Both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting across from the tomb watching as they did this on Friday night before the sun went down. She was right there. And after they had put Jesus' body in the tomb and then everybody left, here's the thing about Mary Magdalene's faith in Jesus. It continued after his death. It just continued. Remember, faith is action? Okay? Listen to what this says. John chapter 20, verse 1. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. Do you know that Mary Magdalene was the first person that saw the resurrected Jesus? Was Mary. Listen to what this says in Mark chapter 16, verse 9. After Jesus rose from the dead early on Sunday morning, the first person who saw him was Mary Magdalene, the woman from whom he had cast out 7 demons. Okay, it didn't stop there for Mary. Listen to this, okay? Mary Magdalene was also the first person to tell others about the resurrected Jesus. Listen to what this says in Luke chapter 24, verse 10. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and several other women who told the apostles what had happened. Mary's life was forever changed by Jesus after that encounter. And here's the cool thing about Jesus. Jesus knew that it was really important that women were involved in his ministry. They were crucial for his ministry. Women's involvement. Okay, so that was Mary Magdalene, but then they mentioned this other lady named Joanna. Joanna. Okay, Joanna was married, probably at a young age, to Cusas, who oversaw the complicated household of Herod Antipas, ruler of Galilee. Now, Herod Antipas is one of the sons of King Herod. Do you remember King Herod? King Herod was crazy. King Herod was the king that actually murdered his wife, murdered his 2 sons, murdered his mother-in-law, murdered his brother-in-law, and killed all the firstborn in Bethlehem that night. That was King Herod. Antipas is one of his sons. In fact, this thing about Antipas had this reputation of being really lazy. So what happened was, like, his place where he stayed or whatever was a disaster. So they hired Cusas to come in and organize the household. Well, Joanna was Cusas' husband. And at some point, Jesus either healed her of a disease or cast out some evil spirits from her. And from that moment, when that took place, from that moment, it didn't take a lot of other convincing for her. That led her, she fully committed herself to Jesus' ministry. She had resources and influence that she used to help advance Jesus' ministry. She had resources and influence that she used in lots of different ways. She could help smooth things out when Jesus ticked off different leaders. Because she knew all about what was going on in Galilee. She knew all those ins and outs. She had influence like none of the other disciples had. That was Joanna. She had financial resources. It costs money to have a ministry. It costs money. And it was because of backers like Joanna that Jesus was able to continue his ministry. I don't think we connect that. And she was one of the ones that told the disciples that Jesus had risen from the dead. That's Joanna. And then there's this other woman called Susanna. Susanna. We don't know a lot about her. But we do know that she was either healed of a disease or Jesus had freed her from demonic oppression. One of the two. She was probably a businesswoman. She was one of those women that had resources and decided to become a follower of Jesus and provide what she could to help Jesus' ministry. Fully committed. Her life was forever changed by Jesus. And according to Luke, these three women were some of the many women that became an important part of Jesus' ministry. All three of these women had something in common that validated the fact that everything changed once they encountered Jesus. And it's a challenge for us this morning, whether you're a man or a woman this morning, if you've encountered Jesus. Okay? First thing that was true of all three of them. Number one is they stayed faithful to Jesus. They stayed faithful to Jesus. During the crowds and when there was no one. They stayed faithful to Jesus. Their resolve was that they were going to remain faithful through the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, all those moments in life, they were going to stay faithful. That is a challenge for us today. Stay faithful to Jesus. Second thing that was true of those three is that they used what they had to help build God's kingdom. They used what they had to help build God's kingdom. Every one of these women brought something to the table. Every one of them brought something to the table that they were willing to share. For many it was financial, for others it was influence, for others it was their talents and gifts, and for others it was a servant's heart to do whatever was needed in Jesus' ministry. For these women, their first encounter with Jesus met a real need in their life. It changed how they looked at life. It actually changed what they were going to pour the rest of their life into. And then when Jesus rose from the dead, it validated what they had believed all along with Jesus. Not only that Jesus was the Messiah, but listen to this. He gave them honor and respect as women, giving them a place in ministry and letting them know they belong. Because in Jesus' culture, women did not belong. And Jesus said, this is new. You are part of this. You are going to help advance my kingdom. For these three women. So there's a key question this morning. Because I'm telling you, these three women knew how to answer this. And it's this: does my life reflect the fact that Jesus rose from the dead? Does my life reflect that fact? Does my life reflect the fact that Jesus rose from the dead? So we're going to sing a song together. This last song we're going to sing. And as you're singing this, I want you to use this as an opportunity to allow God's Spirit to go, okay, am I remaining faithful to Jesus? Am I contributing whatever I can to build God's kingdom? That's the only thing that's going to last. Am I doing that? And then after the song, I'm going to have you sit down again, because it's one of those things. I thought I was done, and Jesus said, no, you're not. You need to share this after this. So, okay? So let's stand, let's sing this song, and then